just opened fire, started shooting. It was a nightmare.
It's easy to immediately generalize and wonder, what are we coming to? That people feel that this is a way to solve any problem.
You see it happen elsewhere, and you pray that it never happens to you, and unfortunately, you can't control people's minds and what they're going to do.
The town of Killeen is in shock tonight after a gunman opens fire on a crowded cafeteria, killing 22 people before turning the gun on himself. Good evening, and thank you for joining us for this expanded edition of the News 8 Update. It ranks as the worst mass shooting in U.S. history. It all began shortly before 1 o'clock this afternoon. Police say a man drove his pickup truck through the front of Luby's Cafeteria on Highway 190 in Killeen. Chip Moody joins us now from the scene with the latest. Chip?
All right, thank you very much, Tracy. I'm standing just outside the Luby's Cafeteria, the scene of today's mass killing. It has been an incredible day for Central Texas, and the incredible story is still unfolding as we talk now. Even at this hour, this Central Texas town of about 50,000 residents is still trying to grapple with the events, the cause, the aftermath of this mass killing. Tonight, the grim process of removing the bodies from the restaurant began around 8 o'clock, about 2 hours ago. The bodies are being transported to Dallas for autopsies by the Dallas County Medical Examiner's Office. Now, for Bell County authorities, this is routine in murder cases. What's not routine, of course, is that the number of victims is very high. The horror began during the lunch hour today at 12:40. Suddenly, with no warning, a blue pickup truck came crashing through the big glass window of the restaurant's dining room. It was no accident. The driver meant to crash into the dining room, and he kept on accelerating, running over several tables and the people who were sitting at them. The truck finally came to rest completely inside the dining room. When the truck stopped, witnesses say the man started shooting before getting out. He then walked over and shot 2 people he had just run over. Steve and Jean Gaither from the Dallas suburb of DeSoto were having lunch when the nightmare began.
He just kept on shooting. Just kept
randomly
on shooting.
shot anybody in his path.
I thought it was the backfire from the car at first. And then he pulled me underneath the table, and then it just kept on going and going. He just kept shooting and shooting, and it wasn't going to stop.
This is truly a tragic event that we're going to talk about in this video. I will go into some detail about the event and even talk about how close it was, or how close to home it really was to me and my family later on. But before I get into the video and the story, I just wanted to say that if you are ever having any dark thoughts or having thoughts of causing harm to yourself or anybody else, or if you even feel you need help, please seek out a friend or a family member, or maybe even a trained professional to find the answers to questions you might have. It could save your life and countless other lives. Just know that you are loved and loved by someone out there, whether you see it or not. Help is and always will be there and available for you. One way to do that is commenting down below in this video. I am not a trained professional, but if you do comment down below, it might be a great start to find the help that you seek and answers you want and or need. Now, onto the episode. The Luby shooting, also known as the Luby's Massacre, was a mass shooting that took place in Killeen, Texas on October 16, 1991 at a local Luby's Cafeteria. George Haynard, who you saw pictured at the very beginning of the video right after the news clip, was the shooter. He drove his Ford pickup through the front window of the restaurant, which you have seen in the video already, and proceeded to shoot at patrons of the restaurant. In total, 50 people were his victims. He killed 22 people, and another 27 of them were injured. He eventually got into a firefight with the city police, but refused to take orders to surrender and eventually turned the gun on himself, making him the 23rd death at the crime scene. The shooting was the most deadly mass shooting in American history until it was surpassed in 2007 by the Virginia Tech shooting. The tragedy did not last long, starting at 12:39 p.m. and lasting until 12:51 p.m. His targets were customers of the restaurant, as well as the people who worked there, more specifically the women who were there, and also first responders. Weapons he used that were recovered at the scene was a Glock 17 and a Ruger P89. As of this day, 30 years later, or more than over 30 years later after the event occurred, his motive is still inconclusive, but the predominant theory is misogyny. Others include misanthropy, rejection, and isolation. To better understand why this happened, let's take a look back to how or why this could have happened. I feel the best way we could do this is to look a little into the background of the perpetrator, George Pierre Henard, who was born on October 15th, 1956 in Sayre, Pennsylvania, and died by suicide during this tragic event on October 16th, 1991 in Killeen, Texas, after his brief shootout with the police. He was born into a wealthy family. His father was a Swiss-born surgeon and a homemaker. He had 2 younger siblings, a brother and a sister, and since the age of 5, George and his family would move across the country because his father worked at several Army hospitals, eventually settling near Las Cruces, New Mexico, where his father worked at the White Sands Missile Range. After graduating high school in 1974, he enlisted in the Navy and served for 3 years before being honorably discharged. He later worked as a mariner merchant, but was later dismissed for his drug use. He later enrolled in a drug treatment program in Houston, Texas. It is not really known as to why Henard hated women so much. Early on in his investigation of the shooting, the Killeen police chief mentioned that Henard had an evident hatred towards women, but did not go into further detail after making that statement. After his parents divorced in 1983, his mother moved to Henderson, Nevada, while his father moved to Houston. The guns he purchased and used in the shooting he purchased at Mike's Gun House in Henderson, Nevada. I do not have an address. I have not been able to locate an address for the store, so I could not look up where in Henderson it is located. October 16, 1991 was Boss's Day, so many people from surrounding businesses had taken their boss out for lunch to celebrate them. When George Henard drove his pickup truck into the front of the restaurant, it was 12:39 p.m. when he did so, and the restaurant was filled close to capacity, which was around 150 people or so. After crashing through the front window, veterinarian Michael Griffith approached the vehicle to see if the driver was okay. Henard then shot him, killing him, and then opened fire at the rest of the restaurant. Henard then exited his vehicle, and this is when he opened fire at the rest of the restaurant, while exclaiming, "All women of Killeen and Belton are vipers. This is what you've done to me and my family. This is what Bell County did to me. This is payback day." Henard circled the restaurant, selecting his victims, mostly women. He picked one person out, stood next to her, called her an explicit name, and shot her point blank in the face. He found another woman hiding underneath a bench near the serving line, asking her if she was hiding from him, and called her an explicit word as well, and then proceeded to shoot her. Steve Ernst was another customer who was there during the event. He was approached by George Henard while hiding underneath a table. I think by this point, he had already been struck by a blow because Ernst rolled over toward Henard, holding his stomach. Near Ernst was a lady who was holding her crying baby, and Henard had ordered her to leave with the baby, and he said, leave with the baby before I actually change my mind. And she promptly left. And after she left, Henard approached Ernst again and shot his wife in the arm. The bullet passed through and killed his 70-year-old mother-in-law, Ellen Hennahan. During a brief pause from the shooting, Henard approached near the rear of the restaurant to a table where 28-year-old Tommy Vaughn was seated. Vaughn was still near his table, but huddled close to the window, to which he threw himself through, which helped other patrons of the restaurant escape. Customers rushed through as much and as fast as they possibly could, and by the time the police arrived a few minutes later, 1/3 of the customers had escaped through the window, and Henard had reloaded his weapons 3 times. I'm not sure if that meant 3 times per weapon or 3 times between the 2 weapons. After police arrived, Henard engaged in a brief shootout. Where he was wounded, he retreated to an area between the 2 bathrooms. People were hiding in there and blocking the doors, making it very difficult for Henard to
Shooting and shooting.
Bathrooms.
And it wasn't going to
Police
stop.
reportedly ordered Henard to surrender, but he refused, saying, "No, I'm going to kill more people." He was shot twice in the abdomen by police. He had used up all of his ammunition at this point for his weapons, minus 1 round. And with his injuries growing more severe, he fatally shot himself in the head with the last round. He had shot and killed 22 people, 10 of them with single shots to the head at point-blank range, and wounded another 27. He had discharged his weapons about 80 times during the shooting, and police discharged their weapons about 30 times. Only Hennard was struck by police fire. No patrons or customers of the restaurant were injured by police gunfire. After the crime had happened, an anti-crime bill was scheduled for a vote in the U.S. House of Representatives the day after the massacre. Some of Hennard's victims had been constituents of Representative Chet Edwards, and in response, he abandoned his opposition to a gun control provision that was part of the bill. The provision, which did not pass, would have banned some weapons and magazines like the ones used by Hennard. Families of the deceased victims, survivors, and policemen received counseling for grief, shock, and stress. The Texas State Association of Rifles, or the Texas State Rifle Association, and others preferred that the state allow its citizens to carry concealed weapons. Democratic Governor Ann Richards vetoed such bills, but in 1995, her Republican successor, George W. Bush, signed one into force. The law had been campaigned by Susanna Hupp, seen in the footage of the video, who was present the day of the massacre. Both of her parents, Alfonso Algartia and Ursula Susie Garcia, were killed by Hennard. She later testified that she would have liked to have her .38 revolver on her person, but said it was 100 feet away in my car. She feared that if she was caught with her weapon on her person, she would have lost her carabagger's license. Hupp testified across the country in support of concealed handgun laws and was elected to the Texas House of Representatives in 1996. A pink granite memorial stands behind the Killeen Community Center with the date of the events and the names of those who lost their lives during the massacre inscribed on the stone. The restaurant reopened 5 months later after the massacre, but closed permanently on September 9th, 2000. In 2006, a buffet called Yang Sing occupied the former Luby's. The restaurant remains open to this day.
Everybody watching has to subscribe. Subscribing is cool. Thanks.